outside. I need to verify you belong
I'm
here.
standing inside my own home. You haven't given me a reason to step out.
I told you already. Come out here now and don't turn this into something bigger than it is.
Unless you have a warrant, you're not coming into my house.
Officer Daniel Mercer, badge number 9031 of the Westfield County Police Department, made the worst decision of his 12-year career the moment he saw a black man mowing the lawn in the upscale neighborhood of Silverbrook Estates and decided something about it didn't add up. He drove past once, slowed down, and kept going. 10 minutes later, he circled the block and returned. This time he parked at the curb and sat in his cruiser, watching the two-story brick house with narrowed eyes. The lawn mower sat near the driveway. Fresh-cut grass lined the sidewalk. The man he had seen earlier was no longer outside. Mercer stepped out of his vehicle and approached the front door with his hand resting near his taser. When the homeowner, Marcus Ellison, opened the door, Mercer didn't introduce himself. He didn't explain why he was there. He simply said, "Step outside, I need to speak with you." Marcus blinked in confusion. He was 49 years old, recently retired after 23 years as a lieutenant with the county sheriff's office. He had spent decades wearing a badge himself. He recognized tone immediately, and this was not a request. "Officer, can I help you?" Marcus asked calmly. "What's this regarding?" "I said step outside," Mercer repeated, his voice flat and authoritative. "Don't make this difficult." Marcus remained inside his doorway. "This is my residence. If there's an issue, you can explain it to me." What Mercer didn't know was that the small Arlo doorbell camera mounted beside the door was recording everything in sharp, high-definition video with crystal-clear audio. He also didn't know that within 48 hours, that footage would be viewed millions of times across social media. And he certainly didn't know that his decision that afternoon would lead to a $7.2 million civil judgment that would dismantle his career, drain his finances, and permanently fracture his family. Before we continue, what city or country are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. We love seeing where everyone is tuning in from. If you believe no one should face force at their own front door for calmly asserting their rights, make sure you like this video and subscribe. That Saturday had been one Marcus had waited decades to enjoy. After more than 2 decades in law enforcement, patrol shifts, high-risk warrant service, domestic violence calls, long nights, and stressful days, he had finally retired with full benefits. 3 weeks earlier, he and his wife, Angela, had closed on their dream home on Brookhaven Court. The quiet neighborhood offered tree-lined streets, manicured lawns, and the kind of peace they had envisioned for the next chapter of their lives. Marcus approached the yard that day not as a chore but as a privilege. Wearing worn jeans and a faded gray t-shirt, he had pushed the mower across the front lawn, edged along the concrete walkway, and cleared overgrown flower beds the previous owners had neglected. The late September sun was warm but manageable. He worked steadily, occasionally exchanging friendly waves with neighbors he was just beginning to meet. A retired couple next door had introduced themselves earlier that week. A woman across the street had brought banana bread as a welcome gesture. Everything felt stable, earned, safe. Around 3:45 p.m., Marcus finished up. His black Chevrolet Silverado sat in the driveway. Yard tools rested near the garage. Small clippings dotted the sidewalk where he planned to sweep after grabbing water. Inside, Angela was preparing dinner. The scent of garlic and seasoned chicken drifted from the kitchen. Marcus washed his hands at the sink, dried them on a dish towel, and reached into the refrigerator for a bottle of cold water. That's when the pounding started. It wasn't a neighbor's polite knock. It was heavy, sharp, authoritative. Marcus froze for half a second. He knew that knock. He had used it himself for years. Someone at the door wanted immediate compliance. He walked to the entryway and glanced at his phone, opening the Arlo app. On the live feed, he saw a Westfield County patrol officer standing rigidly on his porch, hand hovering near his belt. Marcus felt confusion, but not fear. Maybe there had been a reported break-in nearby. Maybe they were canvassing the area. He opened the door calmly, with the relaxed posture of someone who had once worn the same uniform. Officer Daniel Mercer looked at Marcus and saw exactly what he expected. A black man who appeared to have been doing manual labor standing inside a house Mercer subconsciously believed he didn't belong in. "Step outside," Mercer said again. Marcus didn't move. "For what reason?" Mercer's jaw tightened. "I observed someone matching your description earlier acting suspiciously around this property. I need to verify you have the right to be here." Marcus stared at him for a moment, absorbing the implication. "You observed me," Marcus replied evenly. "I was mowing my lawn. I live here. Then you won't mind stepping outside so I can confirm that." The tone made it clear Mercer did not believe him. Marcus felt something heavy settle in his chest, something familiar but sharper this time. He had experienced profiling before. He had seen it from both sides of a badge. But standing in the doorway of his own home, being treated like an intruder in a house he had purchased with decades of service, carried a different weight. "Officer," Marcus said calmly, choosing his words with precision, "I haven't committed a crime. I'm standing inside my residence. If you intend to detain me, you'll need reasonable suspicion. If you intend to enter, you'll need a warrant." The legal clarity in his voice hit Mercer like defiance. Most people complied. Most people stepped outside. Most people avoided confrontation. Marcus did not. Mercer's fingers tightened around his taser grip. "This is your last warning," he said. "Step outside now." And mounted just inches from the doorframe, the camera recorded every word. Marcus could see it in Mercer's face, the shift from uncertainty to ego. The officer wasn't investigating a crime anymore. He was responding to being challenged. "I'm not stepping outside," Marcus said steadily. "You don't have legal grounds to detain me. If you have a question, you can ask it right there." Mercer's voice sharpened. "You're obstructing an investigation." "What investigation?" Marcus replied. "There's no call for service, no complaint. You saw me mowing my lawn." From inside the house, Angela appeared in the hallway. She had heard the raised voices. When she saw the uniformed officer standing at their door with his hand near a weapon, her expression changed instantly. "Marcus," she asked, her voice tight. "What's happening?" Mercer's eyes flicked toward her. "Ma'am, is this your residence?" Angela stepped beside her husband. "Yes, we just moved in this month. What's the problem?" "I need both of you to step outside so I can confirm you live here," Mercer said. Angela looked at Marcus, confusion mixing with fear. Marcus gently touched her arm. "We don't have to go outside," he told her quietly, then louder to Mercer. "We're happy to show identification, mortgage documents, utility bills, whatever you need, but we're doing it inside our home." Mercer felt control slipping. For years, compliance had reinforced his authority. A command was given. A citizen obeyed, situation resolved, but Marcus wasn't afraid, he wasn't aggressive, he wasn't emotional, he was informed. And that unsettled Mercer more than anger would have. "You've got 5 seconds," Mercer said, pulling his taser free from its holster. 5, Angela gasped. "Marcus, please." Marcus didn't raise his voice, he didn't step forward, he didn't make a single threatening movement. "You're escalating this without cause," he said calmly. "You have no warrant, you have no probable cause, you are standing on my property threatening me with a weapon." 4. The Arlo camera's tiny LED blinked quietly beside them. 3. Angela gripped Marcus's arm. "Just step out for a second," she whispered. "No," Marcus replied softly to her, never breaking eye contact with Mercer. "Not like this." 2. Mercer stepped closer to the threshold. "Officer," Marcus said clearly, enunciating each word, "you are not authorized to enter my home. I do not consent." 1. And then Mercer made the decision that would follow him for the rest of his life. He crossed the threshold. Marcus instinctively stepped back into his foyer to create distance, hands still visible at his sides. "You're entering without a warrant," Marcus said loudly, ensuring the camera would capture it. "I do not consent to this entry." "You're under arrest for obstruction," Mercer snapped, reaching for Marcus's arm. Marcus pulled slightly away, not to strike, not to flee, but to avoid being grabbed. "I'm not resisting," he said. "I'm standing in my home." Angela screamed as Mercer raised the taser. "Get on the ground." "I haven't committed a crime," Marcus replied. His voice remained firm, not hostile, not panicked. Mercer fired. The sharp crack filled the entryway. 2 probes shot forward and embedded in Marcus's chest. Electricity surged through his body, every muscle locked. His legs gave out instantly, and he collapsed backward onto the hardwood floor of his own foyer. Angela dropped to her knees beside him, shouting his name as his body convulsed under the current. Mercer stepped forward quickly, flipping Marcus onto his stomach while the wires still trailed from the taser. He forced Marcus's arms behind his back and snapped handcuffs tight around his wrists. Marcus struggled to breathe as the current stopped. The probes were still lodged in his chest. His heart pounded violently against his ribs. "You just assaulted me in my own home," Marcus managed, his voice strained but steady. "You had no lawful basis." Mercer keyed his radio. "Dispatch Unit 32, taser deployed, 1 male subject in custody. Request backup at 1814 Brookhaven Court." Outside, the quiet neighborhood had changed. A neighbor across the street had heard Angela's scream and stepped onto her porch. Another neighbor, 2 houses down, was already dialing 911, reporting that a man appeared to be tased inside his own home. Through the still-open doorway, anyone standing at the right angle could see Marcus lying face down, handcuffed, while his wife knelt beside him in tears. And just inches from the scene, the camera kept recording. Clear video, clear audio, every command, every refusal, every volt. 4 minutes later, 2 patrol cars arrived with lights flashing but no sirens. Sergeant Alina Ruiz stepped out of the lead vehicle. A 25-year veteran with decades of field experience, she approached quickly but calmly, assessing before reacting. She entered through the open front door and stopped cold. A handcuffed man lay face down on the floor. Taser wires trailed from his body. A woman knelt beside him crying. Officer Mercer stood over them, breathing heavily. "What happened?" Ruiz asked sharply. Mercer straightened. "Suspicious person investigation, Sergeant. Subject refused lawful commands and became non-compliant. Taser was necessary to gain control." Ruiz's eyes moved across the room. Family photographs already hung neatly on the wall. Mail stacked on the entry table addressed to this home, shoes aligned by the door. This didn't look like a burglary, it looked like a residence. She turned back to Mercer. What was the call for service? There wasn't one, Mercer said. I observed suspicious behavior earlier. What behavior? Mercer hesitated, and in that pause, Ruiz understood there was a serious problem. Sergeant Ruiz slowly walked farther into the foyer, her boots echoing against the hardwood floor. She had been to hundreds of volatile scenes over her career, domestic disputes, armed standoffs, fatal crashes, but this felt different. This felt unnecessary. She crouched beside Marcus. Sir, can you hear me? Yes, Marcus replied through clenched teeth. His breathing was uneven but controlled. Years of training had conditioned him not to panic under stress. Are you injured? Taser probes in my chest. No other force used beyond that. Angela looked up at the sergeant. He didn't do anything. He was inside. He never touched him. Ruiz turned to Mercer. Did he threaten you? No, Sergeant. Did he attempt to flee? No. Did he display a weapon? No. Ruiz's eyes hardened. Then why was the taser deployed? He refused to comply with lawful orders, Mercer said, though the conviction in his voice had begun to fade. Lawful orders to do what? Ruiz pressed. To step outside. Ruiz paused. On what grounds? He matched the description of someone I observed acting suspiciously around the property earlier. Ruiz stood. Suspicious how? Mercer swallowed. He was mowing the lawn. The silence that followed felt heavy. Ruiz stared at him for a long second. You deployed a taser because a homeowner refused to step outside his own house after mowing his lawn. He was obstructing. Obstructing what? She cut in sharply. Angela helped Marcus shift slightly so he could breathe more comfortably. He told him he lives here. He offered ID. We have our paperwork. Ma'am, please retrieve it, Ruiz said calmly. Angela rushed to the kitchen and returned with Marcus's wallet and a folder from the counter. Ruiz examined the driver's license first. The address matched the home exactly. She flipped through mortgage documents, property tax records, utility statements, all in Marcus and Angela Ellison's names. Everything current, everything legitimate. She exhaled slowly. Remove the cuffs, she ordered Mercer. Mercer hesitated. Now. The metallic click of the handcuffs unlocking sounded louder than it should have. Marcus slowly brought his hands forward, rubbing his wrists where the steel had dug into his skin. Paramedics arrived moments later and began carefully removing the taser probes from his chest. Ruiz stepped aside with Mercer near the hallway. Her voice dropped, but the edge in it was unmistakable. Walk me through your reasonable suspicion. Mercer struggled. The neighborhood is primarily white, expensive homes. He didn't look like. He stopped himself. Like what? Ruiz asked quietly. Mercer said nothing. Ruiz's jaw tightened. Did you run the license plate on the truck? No. Did you check property records? No. Did you receive a complaint? No. Did you witness a crime? No. Ruiz shook her head slowly. Marcus, now sitting upright against the wall with medical gauze pressed to his chest, looked directly at Mercer. I served this county for 23 years, he said evenly. I trained officers on constitutional policing. I supervised use of force reviews. I know exactly what just happened here. Mercer avoided eye contact. Ruiz looked back at Marcus. Sir, what was your role? Lieutenant, Sheriff's Department. Retired 2 years ago. The weight of that statement settled into the room. One of the younger backup officers exchanged a glance with his partner, Mercer's face visibly drained of color. You're telling me you're former law enforcement? Ruiz asked. Yes, Marcus's voice was steady now, and I know department policy as well as state statute. He had no legal basis for detention, no exigent circumstance to enter, and absolutely no justification for deploying a taser. Ruiz's gaze shifted slowly to the small camera mounted beside the door. Its indicator light still blinked. That recorded everything, she asked. Every second, Angela replied, holding up her phone with the live feed open. Video and audio. Ruiz closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, she looked at Mercer differently, not as a subordinate officer, but as a liability. You tased a retired lieutenant inside his own home, she said flatly, and it's on camera. Mercer's breathing grew shallow. Sergeant, I don't, she interrupted. You will not say another word about this incident without counsel present. Marcus leaned his head back against the wall. This didn't have to happen, he said quietly. All you had to do was ask. Outside, more neighbors had gathered at a distance. Phones were visible now. Whispers spread quickly through the quiet street. Inside, Ruiz keyed her radio. Dispatch, this is Sergeant Ruiz. Notify internal affairs immediately. I need a supervisor from command staff on scene. She lowered the radio and looked at Mercer again. Your shift is over. And in that moment, before the lawsuits, before the headlines, before the financial collapse, Officer Daniel Mercer understood that his career had just changed permanently. By Sunday afternoon, the video was everywhere. Marcus had not released it immediately. He spent Saturday evening at the hospital undergoing additional cardiac monitoring as a precaution. The electrical surge had caused severe muscle trauma and irregular heart rhythm that required observation. Angela never left his side. Early Sunday morning, after consulting with a civil rights attorney, Marcus made the decision. The footage went public at 2:17 p.m. Within hours, it spread across social media platforms, news outlets, and national broadcasts. The clarity was undeniable. The audio was unmistakable. Viewers watched Officer Daniel Mercer demand that a homeowner step outside without explanation. They heard Marcus calmly request legal justification. They saw Mercer cross the threshold after being denied consent. They saw the taser fire. They saw Marcus collapse inside his own foyer. By midnight, the video had surpassed 5 million views. By Monday morning, it had doubled. Westfield County Police Chief Ronald Hayes held a press conference at 10:30 a.m. Cameras crowded the steps of the department headquarters. "We take this matter extremely seriously," Hayes said carefully. "Officer Mercer has been placed on immediate administrative leave pending a full internal investigation." The statement did little to calm public outrage. Commentators pointed out the lack of any call for service. Legal analysts broke down the Fourth Amendment violations frame by frame. Civil rights organizations demanded accountability. Inside his home, Marcus watched the coverage quietly. He wasn't celebrating, he wasn't angry, he was measured. "This is bigger than me," he told Angela. "It's about policy." On Tuesday morning at 9 a.m., Marcus filed a federal civil lawsuit. The complaint was detailed and precise. Unlawful entry without warrant, excessive force without justification, assault and battery, violation of civil rights under color of law, intentional infliction of emotional distress. The lawsuit named Officer Daniel Mercer personally in addition to the department. The total damages sought, $7.2 million. Because Mercer was named individually, his personal assets were now at risk. Internal Affairs began its investigation immediately. Body camera footage from responding officers was reviewed. Dispatch logs were examined. Patrol GPS data confirmed Mercer had circled the block twice before approaching the residence. There had been no 911 call, no citizen complaint, no burglary report, no suspicious activity bulletin. The only trigger had been Mercer's personal judgment. Investigators also uncovered something else. Over 12 years of service, Mercer had accumulated 16 civilian complaints. 12 involved minority residents, 7 alleged racial profiling, 6 cited excessive force. None had resulted in serious discipline. Most were closed as unsubstantiated. Now, with clear video contradicting his report, those patterns carried new weight. 3 weeks later, the internal review concluded what the footage had already proven. Mercer had no legal basis to detain Marcus. He had no probable cause to enter the residence. He violated department policy by escalating force without threat. The findings were submitted to the district attorney's office. 6 months after the incident, Westfield County agreed to settle its portion of the civil case for $4.3 million. The settlement included mandatory policy revisions, de-escalation retraining requirements, and expanded oversight of field stops. But Marcus's legal team continued pursuing Mercer personally for the remaining $2.9 million. That's when the real consequences began to unfold. Mercer's financial disclosures revealed approximately $380,000 in total assets. His home held $210,000 in equity. He had $95,000 in retirement savings. Roughly $75,000 sat in investment and joint accounts. It wasn't enough. When the civil judgment was finalized in federal court, Mercer attempted to file for bankruptcy protection. The court denied it. Judgments arising from intentional torts, including civil rights violations and assault, are often non-dischargeable. The ruling meant Mercer would be personally responsible. The court ordered asset seizure. His house was sold. His retirement accounts were liquidated. Savings were transferred to satisfy the judgment. Because many assets were jointly held with his wife, Claire Mercer's finances were also affected. In less than a year, the Mercer family lost their home, their savings, and their long-term security. Their 2 teenage children, ages 16 and 14, faced relentless humiliation at school as classmates circulated the viral video. Claire filed for divorce 8 months after the ruling. Meanwhile, criminal proceedings moved forward. The district attorney filed state charges: assault, battery, unlawful entry. The trial lasted 4 days. The prosecution played the doorbell footage repeatedly for the jury. Each frame reinforced the same conclusion. There had been no threat, no resistance, no justification. Mercer was convicted on all counts. He was sentenced to 20 months in county jail and 3 years of supervised probation. He served 15 months before release, now a convicted felon permanently barred from law enforcement. At 41 years old, Daniel Mercer found himself working in a distribution warehouse earning $15 an hour. His wages were garnished to satisfy the remaining civil judgment. 5 years later, he had paid approximately $436,000 toward the debt. Millions remained. He lived alone in a small 1-bedroom apartment. His contact with his children was limited. The badge and authority he once carried were gone. Marcus and Angela remained in their home on Brookhaven Court. Marcus became an advocate for constitutional policing and use of force accountability. He was invited to speak at training seminars across the state, where the footage was used as a case study. When reporters asked whether he felt vindicated by the outcome, his answer never changed. "I didn't want vindication," he would say. "I wanted to finish yard work on a Saturday without being treated like a suspect in my own home." The video remained online, a permanent digital record of how 10 minutes of unchecked bias reshaped two families' futures. One decision, one unlawful escalation, one camera that never blinked. Mercer would spend decades paying for those minutes, one garnished paycheck at a time. The lesson was stark and unavoidable. Cameras record everything. The Constitution applies everywhere. And when accountability arrives, it can take absolutely everything. If you believe transparency matters in modern policing, share this story. What reforms do you think could prevent incidents like this? Leave your thoughts below. And if you want more stories where truth is captured in real time and consequences follow, subscribe, because the camera doesn't lie and neither do the outcomes. The public reaction did not fade after the initial surge of attention. By the end of the first week, national civil rights organizations had formally requested a federal review of Westfield County Police Department's field contact policies. Legal scholars dissected the incident in televised panels, pointing out the constitutional violations with clinical precision. Former prosecutors called the taser deployment indefensible. Retired chiefs described it as a catastrophic failure of discretion. Marcus, however, stayed measured. He declined interviews for several days, choosing instead to recover physically and emotionally. The electrical discharge had left deep muscle bruising across his torso. Sleep came in fragments. Loud knocks, even harmless ones, made his pulse spike involuntarily. Angela noticed the change immediately. "He's calm," she told a reporter later, "but he's not the same." The department launched mandatory bias awareness training within 2 months of the settlement announcement. Patrol procedures were revised. Officers were required to document objective, reasonable suspicion in real time during field contacts. Supervisory approval became mandatory before entering private property absent exigent circumstances. None of it erased what had already happened. Meanwhile, Mercer's criminal conviction triggered additional consequences. His state law enforcement certification was permanently revoked. His name was entered into the Brady Disclosure Database, meaning any future testimony he might give in court would be flagged as unreliable due to misconduct. In practical terms, his policing career was over forever. Financial strain intensified. Wage garnishment consumed a significant percentage of his income. Credit lines closed. Collection notices arrived monthly. The divorce proceedings between Mercer and Claire finalized quietly. Court filings revealed mounting debt, foreclosure documentation, and depleted college savings accounts. Their children transferred schools the following year. In interviews, Claire refused to speak publicly about her former husband, offering only one sentence through an attorney. "Our family paid for a decision we did not make." Back in Silverbrook Estates, life slowly returned to routine for most residents. Lawns were trimmed, mailboxes repainted, block parties resumed. But Marcus could no longer hear a heavy knock at the door without remembering the sound of the taser discharge. He began channeling that energy into reform advocacy. He spoke at academies about the thin line between suspicion and assumption. He emphasized how quickly authority can shift from protection to violation when unchecked bias enters decision-making. During one seminar, a young recruit asked him whether he hated Officer Mercer. Marcus paused before answering. "No," he said finally. "Hate doesn't fix systems, accountability does." The Arlo footage continued circulating online as a teaching example in both legal classrooms and police academies. Frame-by-frame breakdowns showed precisely where escalation replaced dialogue. Analysts highlighted the moment Mercer crossed the threshold without consent. They slowed the video to examine body positioning, voice tone, and timing. It became more than a viral clip, it became instructional material. 5 years after the incident, the civil judgment still followed Mercer like a shadow. Every paycheck included automatic deductions. Tax refunds were intercepted. Any inheritance or windfall would be subject to collection. The debt was structured to remain enforceable for decades. He had paid hundreds of thousands and owed millions more. Meanwhile, Marcus and Angela remained in their home. They refinanced at favorable terms following the settlement, investing part of the compensation into community legal education programs. Marcus founded a nonprofit focused on constitutional literacy for homeowners. The program taught residents what officers can and cannot demand without warrant or probable cause. Workshops filled quickly. When asked whether the money changed his life, Marcus answered carefully. "It restored what was taken," he said, "but it didn't erase the memory." The broader conversation around body cameras and residential rights intensified statewide. Legislators proposed clearer statutory language regarding warrantless entry. Funding increased for independent oversight boards. The ripple effects extended beyond one street in Silverbrook Estates. 10 minutes. That was the estimated time between Mercer first seeing Marcus mowing the lawn and the taser being fired. 10 minutes of assumption, 10 minutes of escalation, 10 minutes that redefined two households forever. The camera had not shouted, it had not intervened, it had simply observed. And in observing, it ensured that the truth could not be rewritten. Accountability did not arrive instantly, but when it did, it arrived fully. Years passed, but the incident never fully faded from public memory. The video still resurfaced periodically online, often during national debates about policing standards and civil rights. Law professors used it in constitutional law courses. Training officers referenced it during discussions about escalation thresholds and lawful entry. Marcus adjusted to a new routine. He no longer introduced himself first as a retired lieutenant. Instead, he introduced himself as a homeowner who knew his rights. The nonprofit he founded expanded into neighboring counties. Workshops filled community centers on weeknights. Residents learned practical steps. How to respond calmly, how to ask clarifying questions, how to document interactions legally. Angela remained his steady partner in every appearance. Though she rarely spoke publicly, she often reminded audiences of one thing: know your rights before you need them. For Mercer, the years felt heavier. The warehouse job remained steady but unremarkable. Each paycheck arrived already reduced by garnishment. Promotions were out of reach due to his criminal record. He avoided news coverage about policing reforms, avoided social media, avoided any reminder of the badge he once wore. The debt persisted. The probation period ended, but financial penalties did not. The civil judgment followed him like a permanent attachment. Occasionally, he thought about that afternoon, about the moment he chose command over conversation. One decision, a cross threshold, a trigger pulled, the consequences had outlasted the uniform. Meanwhile, on Brookhaven Court, Marcus mowed his lawn every Saturday without interruption. The camera remained mounted beside the door, silent, steady, recording. The story never became about a single taser deployment. It became about proof. A camera recorded what memory could have distorted. It captured tone, timing, distance, and decision. It removed ambiguity. 10 minutes of unchecked assumption dismantled a career, fractured a family, and left a permanent mark on another. Marcus often ends his seminars with the same sentence: the Constitution doesn't disappear at your front door. On Brookhaven Court, the lawn still gets cut. The doorbell camera still blinks quietly. And somewhere else, an officer now pauses before crossing a threshold, because once the camera saw everything.